Voltron Legendary Defender Season 1. Now before I get into this review, I do want to mention that I'll be doing, kind of spoiler free for the very beginning for anyone who might be coming across this if you haven't checked it out yet. Of course, with it being a full season review, I will be getting into spoilers and talking about just like some of my favorite moments and things like that. Another big thing I have to mention before doing this full review for the season is that I was supposed to do, like, my initial plan, because I'm finally getting into like my Netflix anime. I've been holding off on like all the anime stuff on Netflix, and I'm like, I like this, I like that, and I haven't checked anything out. So the plan was I watch one episode, review it, and then I watch the rest of the season and then do, a full season review. And that didn't work with this, because I was like, that was a sweet first episode. It was even an hour-long episode. It was like the perfect thing to be like, okay, I can watch a full hour, take a break, and do a review. And I don't remember what happened that first day, but for whatever reason, I didn't get the chance. And I flew through both seasons. So I've seen both seasons, but I'm still going to do two separate reviews for them. But just starting off, like, kind of the spoiler-free thing, it was really good. Like, both seasons are great, but of course, keeping spoilers away from season 2, this was really fun. I think all the characters are well done. It's a small group of characters, so you get to learn who everybody is fairly easily. It's not like I kind of suck with character names. Like, I'm always horrible with that. And outside of, some of the recurring characters, like even the main villain, he's like the one person whose name I can't remember. I even remember like the person beneath him more than that actual character's name. But I remember all the main characters. They're all really unique, and of course they all have their different personalities. And it was really sweet. Like, I thought it was really funny. Karan is absolutely hilarious. Like, I love his character. The first episode of season 2, they have a scene with him that it was absolutely hysterical, but he's funny all the freaking time. I like all the different characters. We got our couple of main characters, or our first 3 main characters. So start off with Pidge, Hunk, and Lance. And they're the 3 that end up finding this crashed ship, and then that leads to our other 2 main characters, or 2 of our other main characters, Keith and Shiro, and then that leads to our last 2 main characters, Aiden and Karan, and then of course Princess Allura. So I really like the characters. They all have good personalities, and they clash sometimes, but of course they work together because that's what they're supposed to do. And this show definitely makes me like Voltron, because Voltron was never one of those anime that I really got into. Never even tried. Honestly, it wasn't that I wasn't interested. It was just that it's one of those classic animes. It's a lot like Speed Racer, where it's like I appreciate it just because it's a classic, but like Voltron has like almost 80 episodes or something. That's a ton for an old anime. So it's just never been one of those things where I really wanted to get into it, because it was like so old. It was a little too classic for me to be that interested. So I was never really interested. There was another Voltron series in 2011, which I completely forgot even existed until I was looking some stuff up before doing this review, and I was like, oh, I kind of remember that. I feel like it was on like Nicktoons or something, because that's where they put like, a bunch of random stuff. Like they had like, the Marvel cartoons were always on like Nicktoons and stuff, which is typically why nobody watched it, because not everybody has Nicktoons. But I'm like, I kind of remember that vaguely, but it was just like Voltron never stood out to me. And the only reason I even cared, because it wasn't until very recently that I finally watched it, but it was like just before season 2 came out. That's when I found out that the showrunners for this are the same people that worked on Legend of Korra. It's not the creators of Avatar and Legend of Korra, but they're showrunners. They did storyboard work, and one of the showrunners was a director for like both series and stuff like that. So I was like, oh. Once I heard that, I was like, well, I have to check it out now. Then you can tell for sure the animation is very similar to specifically Legend of Korra, just because it's newer. So that's really awesome. But the writing is very similar. You can tell they take a lot of the experience of having like a small group of pretty awesome characters. They might not be as epic as like people who can move the elements of the planet, but they're really cool characters, and they're in people thrown from Earth. It just kind of Lost in Space sort of thing, and then poof, you guys are controlling giant robot lions that have different random abilities, and then they combine to make a super mega robot. And it's really well done. You can kind of see some of that stuff where it's like, okay, I can see how they do just the character interactions and stuff like that, and character arcs, even just in the one season, because you have even though it's a small group of characters, you still have 5 characters from Earth who all have different lifestyles. And then you have our 2 characters from the alien planet, and this is where I'll start to get into like some of the major spoilers for anyone who might actually be watching that hasn't seen it yet. So it's like officially your warning. But we get into like the backgrounds of some of these characters, and that's when we get into things like learning out that learning that Pidge is actually a girl and her name is actually Katie. So I thought that was very interesting. Of course, the emotional element, which I feel like they didn't touch on too much in the first season, but the emotional element of you have characters who, two characters who wake up after, I think it was 1,000 years or something crazy like that. It may have been 10,000 years. I think it was like 10,000. And these are the last two people minus these, these like sentient mice that exist, from this actual species. And I thought that was very cool. Of course they touch on it, and they have kind of like the Fortress of Solitude thing with Superman, where Allura can talk to her father sometimes. So I thought it was very well done, the way that they do the, the character arcs, and a little bit gets revealed because there's like this really big mystery with Shiro where, piece by piece he starts to remember a couple of things, and it was very interesting the way they do it. He finds out in like the first episode that he actually has like this crazy robot arm and stuff like that, and it's like, that's kind of his weapon because he doesn't have his Bayard like everybody else does, which gets revealed towards the end of the season. The main villain, he actually has the Bayard still, and it's like, oh, that's why Shiro doesn't have it, because this guy used to be a paladin. So it's just like some crazy stuff kind of gets revealed like right at the end, which I thought was very well done. And he's controlling it, and it's like, they talk about that from the very beginning, and it shows up multiple times throughout the first season, where, they'll be going through some crazy stuff, and then the lion's like, check it out, you got a spot for your Bayard. Sometimes I felt like it was kind of funny, because I mean, like, they went through this before, and then the lion was like, what, this second time, I'm pretty sure you guys might die, so here you go, here's something that'll, work for you. And that happened in the second season too, where I'm like, there's some moments where I'm like, they almost repeat some issues that they have, and then the second time is when the lion's like, oh, here's a secret weapon to win. And I'm like, that doesn't, something about that like just didn't feel right to me, because it's supposed to be like this connection with the lions, and it would really just be they're in trouble, and it's like one specific enemy through the first season, and I can't remember exactly which enemy it was, but it was like it's the same enemy, and then the second time they fight is when they get like the new weapon. Or in any situation when they're fighting something where it's like we don't know what to do, they'll either beat it with something old, or like, it'll randomly be like, here you go, someone's line will be like, here's a new thing for you. So it was like, sometimes, most of the time it made sense, but after a while it was like, the moments where the lion gives them, their lions give them new abilities, I felt like it wasn't like suddenly a new connection, it was just like, oh, you guys are in trouble, really, really bad, so here's a new weapon. And it was like, sometimes, I just feel like it kind of, leaps away from like that whole connection aspect. It's just like, trouble, new weapon. It's always cool, because every time they bust out a new weapon, it's super freaking sweet to me. But sometimes it was just like, especially when it was literally the same enemy, I was like, this is the exact same situation. And then the second time, it was just like, here's a new thing to kill it. And I was just like, that time it kind of bugged me. Like any other time, I was like, okay, sure, we'll just say it's the connection. But the second time, it was literally the same situation twice. And then it was like, all right, here you go. So that bugged me like just a little bit. It was like a very minor thing. It was like the only thing, really, the entire season that even caught my attention as far as an issue. Other than that, I thought the pacing was great. The first episode was really awesome, being like an hour long. That really surprised me, because after that I was shocked to find out that the other episodes were only 30 minutes. I was like, oh, it's a special, first episode, which is really weird because, of course, it's on Netflix. It was like, it's weird that they would have the first episode only be an hour-long episode, but it was kind of a cool format to do it, just to kind of really make sure you're fully invested. It's not like full anime style. It's kind of like American style, where it's like the first episode will be a real big special, and then everything else after that will be, nice little 30-minute piece. So I think they did a great job with it. Love the characters, love the design for the characters and the personalities. A lot of the voice actors I'm quite familiar with. The guy who plays Shiro, Josh Keaton, I didn't realize that was him. I think until like the second season, I kept thinking like, he sounds so familiar, but I'm so used to him, like, the stuff I watched him in was like years ago, so he actually sounds older, and he's probably just using his regular voice. But I know him from like Transformers Prime. He was like the main male lead in that, and he was playing a teenager. And then before that was Spectacular Spider-Man. It was Josh Keaton. So it was like, every time I've seen him as a character, he's always been one of the younger characters in the series. Or even if he's the oldest, he's still playing a teenager. So it's kind of interesting seeing him, or hearing his voice, and it's like, it's so similar, but oddly enough, it's just like, I couldn't figure it out until, later on. But love the design for the characters. I like the way they do the pacing out of the stories, where it's like, okay, here's something for this character, here's you know, this character having a connection, and when they, you know, split up, I kind of like the way they do that, especially with it being the Netflix format, where it's like you can just go from one episode to the next. You'll have characters, you know, branching off, and it's like, all right, well, these characters do this, and then these characters do this in the next episode, and it's not split up between, you know, the two missions. It's like this mission gets a whole episode, and then these three characters during their mission get a whole episode. So I actually really like that. That's how kind of the elements play out for the series, where they branch off for, you know, whatever specific mission, and then they'll come back together towards the end. It's like, that's cool. We get to see how that plays out, and then they tend to blend in during the end of the second episode when everyone, you know, comes back together. So really great first season. I'm definitely going to do my review for the second one right after this, but highly recommend you check it out. If you haven't, odds are you've got like all, well, I hardly did any spoilers really. I just talked about what happens in it, but it's really freaking good. Like, I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. There's really not too much to spoil outside of like some of the backstories. I feel like there's more backstories actually in season 2 than there are in this one, but you know, it's the first season, and they do focus a lot on specific characters. I feel like that was kind of their decision. It was like, all right, well, these, I say really it was like Shiro and Pidge get the main focus in this first season as far as backstories, and then the second season is when they get to like some of the other characters, and they kind of reference stuff with Allura and Karan just because they're like, you know, people without their people anymore. So it's, you know, certain stuff going on there. But definitely a great first season. Some of my favorite stuff for sure was going towards, you know, definitely in the season finale with some really great stuff, and it was like, wow, they do some great stuff with this villain, and we don't really know how things are going to play out. The characters are kind of losing, you know, they think they're winning and then they're losing, and it's like, what the F is happening? And then they, you know, randomly get set free to go and basically survive because they got their butts whooped fighting the main villain, you know, at the end of the season. I was like, that's actually a cool way to do it. So, excuse me, we get to see this cool villain continue onward, and I'm excited to see what they do. Of course, I've seen season 2, so I'm excited more for where they're going for season 3, but I think they did a really good job with this first season, and, you know, having characters, establishing a few recurring characters. It's like just from the first couple of episodes they already do that, and I like the way that that kind of plays out, and they kind of continue that going into season 2. And that's one of the things I actually like about the show, is that they'll introduce some things and it's like, all right, this is important for this reason, and it doesn't magically, you know, it's not magically like the perfect solution where it's gone forever. Like, it solved that one problem we had forever, and you never see this thing again. It's like, it's mentioned, like, this is why this is important, and it stays important for the rest of the series. Like, it's referenced several times, and they do stuff like that with the Balmira. And I love that because it's like, all right, they need this crystal for the ship, and it's relevant as they go forward throughout the series. Like, they either go back there just because they're like kind of the first people they helped really, or because they need to do something random where they need another crystal. And it's like, I like the fact that they introduced like this, it was like the first big thing that they did as their first kind of grand mission, not counting the first episode. And it makes sense, you know, it's like, we need this because it's like the only place where you can get these specific items, and it's relevant in general. It's like, it's not relevant for an episode, it's just relevant because that's life. Like, if something has a certain purpose, it will always have that purpose. And in a lot of shows, you don't see that. It's like, we only need it one time ever. That character might show up like 4 seasons later, you know, if it's like a special person or something. It's like, nope, this is important, and it stays important. And that's something that I think really works for this show. Like, something's referenced, and it'll be referenced several times, not just like anything to help them fight. It'll just be character stuff where it's like reference, they'll make references to other episodes. The language stuff, like all the guys from Earth learning the Altean language and saying Quiznak and figuring out the difference between like seconds and whatever was, I can't remember the different, you know, measurements of time the Alteans use, but the kids were like, you know, the guys are learning all those different things, and they're starting to, you know, pick up on the languages and things like that. So you know, it's just little stuff like that that is really well done in this series in general, not just the first season. But really great first season. Of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about it. Some of your favorite moments, some of your favorite episodes, some of your least favorite moments and least favorite episodes as well. I gotta say for sure, it's hard to pick out like any specific episode outside of like the season finale, but definitely one of my favorite things was the introduction of the Balmira, because it had such great relevance throughout the whole first season, where it's not just like a one-off sort of thing. And it just gave me, for whatever reason, it just gave me like a huge appreciation, because they could literally have them going all over the galaxy and never meet the same people again, It's like, no, they need to make an army and have allies, so they, constantly visit them. So it's more just an element of the writing in general rather than a specific, episode or moment. So that's kind of like my favorite thing, is that they have something that gets set up and it just stays there because they truly need these people for whatever reason it may be. And, I just think that's a good element that a lot of shows is like, we need you, and then you never see them until like literally the final battle where everyone has to show up, and that's the only time you ever see them again. So I feel like they don't do that with this, and that's a great element to the series. But like I said, I would love to know what you guys thought about this season, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And, if you haven't seen it yet, definitely let me know if you have any random questions, if I haven't spoiled too much for you. If you have seen it, like I said, I want to know, what you guys thought about it. If you've seen season 2, like I said, I'm going to do my review for that. So if you want to do comparisons, just save it for that review and you'll put your comments there. But in general, I want to know what you guys thought about this season, what you think about the show, in general, without spoilers, of course. Or you can put a spoiler tag if you would rather do that. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.